Alright, welcome back to the SuperCoach Nuff channel. In this video, it's the moment we've all been waiting for. The season 2024 SuperCoach NRL is officially open. So, chance now to get in if you haven't had the SuperCoach Plus and put together your teams. Obviously, if you've had the team picker, it should roll over. Also, an opportunity to get into the league. So we will get the league codes up at the end of the video. Also put them in the video description, so it's nice and easy for everyone to access and get on board and have some fun with us this season. In saying that, I have reset my team to do a bit of a team reveal, and it has changed a bit since the initial team reveal a month or so ago, maybe 4 weeks ago from memory, just after Christmas. I do remember that. And I guess rather than going through in the regular sort of order, I'm going to talk about the two big changes. And so the first change is at halfback. We've still got Nathan Cleary locked in, but we're also going to bring in Nicho Hynes. So initially I was fading Nicho Hynes, thinking he will drop in value. But and I guess the drop in value was based on him partnering up with Braden Trindle. He does have a history of when Trindle's playing that his scoring decreases. However, in saying that, the Sharks do have a nice schedule. After the Warriors in week 1, they do have the Bulldogs and the Tigers back to back. And, unless there's some significant improvements in their defenses, there's a chance that at least one big game out of Nicho Hynes. His cash is going to stay up around the near 1 million mark going into his buy in round 5. So rather than having to try and find the cash to bring him in after his buy, and I guess, sort of agreeing with most of the competition, so 41% have brought him in. You can see 42% have clear. It'd be interesting to see how many run with both. But I think, it's a bit of a defensive move more so than being aggressive and chasing value. But, I think it's if you can, you want to start with both. And the way that I've set up my team at the moment, I can. So, that's the first big sort of change. The other one is, I guess, the other player that I'm scared of not starting, and that's Kalen Ponga at fullback. So, 37% owned. So again, that's a lot to bet against. I'm not quite sure on the Knights' run, but I do know that they don't have a bye before Origin. So, he becomes a VC option almost every week, which is really nice to have. And Cleary and Hynes are both going to have buys. Harry Grant, spoiler alert, is still in the team. He's got an early buy. So just having that one player that will play every week just makes it easier for particularly the vice captain sort of conversation. So they're probably the two big changes I've made. One place where I haven't made a change is at hooker. So still going with Harry Grant as the lock option in the starting side, and Jaden Brayley. Probably the one option that might derail Brayley as my backup hooker is if I was going to say Jacob Arthur, but what's his dad's name? Brad Arthur. He's true to his word, and he is only going to pick one of the hookers to play 80 minutes, Hands or Lussick. So, it could end up being Hands if he is locked in to play that 80-minute role. It could be Lussick if he's locked in to play that 80-minute role. Because I do think that even if Brayley plays big minutes, that he will still get a bit of a spell with Phoenix Crossland coming on. It could be interesting to see if they shift him into like a lock position while Phoenix Crossland's on the field. And if he did show something like that and looks like he could play 80 minutes, well then I think we would go with the the ups or the known quantity, I suppose, that is Brayley. But I'll leave hands in there with the slightly elevated price just to show that there is that tiny bit of flexibility. And there's not as much wiggle room as I'd like in this team, but it's still pre-season. We are a bit optimistic about some of the picks, and that's perfectly fine. I guess in order to fit in these big hitters, I have had to compromise on my initial declaration that I was going big in the front row. There's no value. I still believe there's not a lot of value, but what I'm hoping is that the extra points that I'm getting from these upside picks like Hines and Ponga will outweigh, someone like Big Tino. So while I'd love to have Big Tino on the team, I'm not as scared of what he can produce as opposed to what Hines or Ponga could produce potentially if I didn't have them. So I am still going to pick Payne Haas. I can't afford one big hitter, and I just think, Big Tino's got a buy in round two. Um, Des Haslam might do something funky with the forward rotation. You don't know yet. And also, he is a bit more expensive. So, you know, Payne's a bit cheaper, known quantity, no buys at the start of the year. So, and with Fanua Blake, he did score a lot of tries last year. So I think his price will dip a bit. And so for that reason, I've just gone with Payne Haas. Again, a pretty popular pick at 32%, but I think the logical sort of choice for the gun front row spot. I guess the sort of cut price option that I'm banking at the moment on, scroll down a bit further, is Totola from the Rabbitohs. So did have a lot of issues with concussion last year. Hopefully he's fit and healthy and ready to go. And we're not expecting him to make it to 600k, which is sort of that 150 mark that we'd like. But even if he pushes up to closer to 50, that'll get him up around 100k in profit. And that'll probably help us to get one of those other big guns down the track. And then on the bench, a couple of the cheaper options. So Xavier Willison from the Broncos and Samuel Hughes from the Dogs. So I think those seem to be the two clubs where there's the most sort of options for minutes for a cheaper type player. Fletcher Baker, I guess, was the front runner in early preseason chat for the Broncos starting spot that's been vacated by Flegler. There's been, a bit of a media pump up about Kobe Hetherington maybe gunning for the 13 jersey and Carrigan shifting somewhere, whether it's front row or on an edge, even a bit of chat. Corey Jensen's come up as a bit of an option, the older, wiser head. But I think, Willison has youth on his side. And, I mean, going for upside, really. He sort of probably has the most room for growth. So we're hoping that that's the case. It might be a slow burn. That's what you should expect with front row cheapies anyway. Like I said, there's very few like Payne Haas that go from cheapie to gun straight away. So whichever way we go with our bench selections, we've just got to be patient. Um, so Samuel Hughes is the other one. So I didn't really know where this hype had come from originally, and sort of didn't include him in any earlier drafts. But I guess the hype has come from Phil Gould talking up how well he's training. And there is definitely a middle forward spot up for grabs there at the Dogs. So if he's the one that grabs it and can run with it, again, bit of slow burn, but again, making up the numbers in the squad, will absolutely have him at that price. In the second row, still going fairly cheap. So the most expensive option is still my man Viliami Kikau. Proven upside. I'm hoping the Dogs will be better. He'll definitely be better, as long as he can steer clear of injuries. So he's going to be a real leader in that forward pack, and I think he'll lead by example. So locking him in for sure. Do have the option of going with Sean Bloor at a similar price point if I need to cut a bit of money. Um, Given his move to the Storm, he is definitely one I'm interested in. But got to cut a couple of corners in the second row. So here's the unfortunate one that misses out at this point. The other two, I guess, above 400k are Piakura and Curran. So again, Piakura looks like he's going to take Capewell's spot on the edge at the Broncos. Bit of chat, maybe Carrigan could shift wider, but I really think Carrigan's a solid middle player. Could slide into the front row, and then Kobe Hetherington comes in the conversation at 13. But for now, we're going to lock in Pirakura. And Curran, I think he's going to feature somewhere in the Dogs starting team, play big minutes. And he's the banker, I think, out of all these sort of value second row options, he's the one that's most likely to succeed for us. On the bench, we've got a few even cheaper again options. Morgan Smithies, he's looks like he'll get some good minutes with Corey Horsburgh even. Missing the first few weeks of suspension. So hopefully that's enough time for him to establish himself in a big minute role there at the Raiders. And Kai Pearce-Paul. So one of the contenders for the left edge spot at the Knights playing, on Ponga's preferred edge is nice. And my feeling is even if Dylan Lucas gets the jump early because Pearce-Paul is recovering from injury, they may want to ease him in. I'm going to treat it as a bit more of a slow burn pick, not expecting him to jump up in value straight away. But I would imagine that at some point this season he will get the nod to start. And once he does, then he has that opportunity to accelerate his value. So I think even if he is picked on the bench, I'm more than happy to have him in my squad. And then the final pick is Tallis Duncan. So there's a bit of chat that they're looking at Duncan to play second row. So they're talking about the right edge. They're perhaps moving Kyle Matangi to what would be one of the craziest edges in the game with Cody Walker, Jack White, and Alex Johnston, and Kyle Matangi slotting in on that left edge. So if that does eventuate, I think 321k is great value. Players like Jai Arrow, Jacob Host haven't looked convincing on the edge for South. So I think he really has a chance to cement that spot this year. So we've got halfbacks at 5'8". We do have another nice value pick in Jaden Campbell. So from early chat from Des Hasler is AJ Brimson is going to move into the centres. And you would imagine that is to facilitate Jaden Campbell at fullback. There is an outside chance that it goes to Kinney, the other sort of young gun fullback, but you'd imagine Campbell's slightly ahead given that he has a bit more experience in the grade. And any time we can get a fullback in the 5'8" slot, i.e. Kalen Ponga last year, you jump all over it. So I think that 23% will actually grow throughout. And on the bench, we're going to go with Fainu. So the hope is that he gets the starting 6 spot, as a way of getting him into first grade, paired with Caesar, and then perhaps looking to situate him next year that he can partner with Jerome Luai. They do have Jaden Sullivan. They could go again with more experience, but there is big raps on this kid. And at bottom dollar, we would like to see, at least one bottom dollar cheapie just to make our lives a lot easier. I'll skip the centre wing just to fill in the other fullback spot. So lots of great options, but we are going to chase a bit of value here. And it sounds like that Blake Taff is going to get the job at the Bulldogs at fullback. So there was talk it was Connor Tracy, Stephen Crichton coming to the club under the guise that he could be playing fullback. But the latest sort of track watching reports is that Taft's been training at fullback with the NRL squad, and he does have previous experience playing at fullback through his time at South Sydney, obviously deputising for Latrell, but definitely showing he was more than capable when in the role. So having someone like that at 400k, you know, it does mean we miss out on the likes of Pappenhausen, you know, or another gun like Latrell, Reece Walsh, Tommy Turbo. But um, you know, having someone NRL sort of experienced fullback, and we've seen that he can score at that price. Again, I am banking on the Bulldogs being better this year, and that is partly as a fan, but I guess also just when you look at the options available, it stands to reason that there will be a bit more success in attack in particular. So onto the centre wing. So it does only give us a couple of mil to spend. So um, none of the top values. You know, originally I did have Ruben Garrick in the team as a goal kicking back, but we are chasing a bit of value. So the first player I'm going to pick, again, another Bulldogs player, Jacob Carraz. So a little bit heavy on the Dogs, but they don't have a bye until round 9. So, you know, it gives a bit of time to sort of shuffle around some of these picks. You know, Taff might be able to be upgraded to a fallen premium by that stage, that sort of thing. I'm not married to having all the Dogs players in the team, um, but you know I think there is some value. And again, hopefully, if the Dogs do well, my Supercoach team will do well. But yeah, Kiraz, you know, you'd imagine if Taft's playing fullback, it's going to be Crichton and Connor Tracy in the centres. Maybe Bronson Sherry finds a way in opposite Crichton. But I think what that means is that Kiraz is going to go back to the wing. And that's where he's at his best for Supercoach. You know, the runs, the tackle breaks, the offloads, the tries, hopefully, again, mean that at 600k, he can match those 700k players and, you know, push that 60 or close to 60 average up towards 70. We have seen glimpses of it. It's just whether it can be consistent is the gamble we're taking. The next sort of pick, and I guess it's more relative to the price point rather than the pick itself. But Dan Russell. So a bit of chat around a few different options on that. I think it's right edge for the Dragons. It's definitely one of the edges. Jaden Silver's probably got one edge, but a few options on the other. If it's Dan Russell, we'll have him in the team. I guess ideally it would be, if I can find him on the list, Tom Eisenhuth, you know, at 130k discount. I don't know where that chat's come from, but um, he's definitely the sort of got the work rate that we would want from a Supercoach player. He just always struggles to get the minutes because of his versatility. He's more of a bench utility type role. But you could argue that Dan Russell's in a similar mold. So, you know, it depends which way the new coach wants to go. It could also be one of the Couchman brothers, in which case we might have to, you know, find a spot in the second row, potentially. But for now, we're going to put Dan Russell there. If it wasn't Russell or Eisenhuth, you know, we could end up going with a pick like around that price point. You know, Tyrone Munro rather, if he gets a start at Souths. Jake Averillo, um, you know, it sounds like he's going to be a starting centre at the Dolphins. So, you know, there is options around that price point. So we don't have to be married to that pick necessarily. The next one, which seems to be fairly popular, Taylor May. A lot of people think he'll just be a straight swap for Crichton. I'd imagine he'd go back to the left wing and Taruva would come into the centres. But either way, it seems like it's his place to start with in the team. And we know what he's capable of, so we'll lock him in. After that, again, more of a player at that price, but Fa'alongo, you know, he's obviously got the talent at the Storm, but could potentially start off the bench playing that utility role. which would obviously be SuperCoach poison. He would lose value, and we would have to basically wait for an injury to then inject him back into the team. Um, Obviously, other options is if Sherry gets up, you could slot him in there. Xavier Savage perhaps gets a spot at the Raiders, could use him. Drew Hutchinson or even Tom Eisenhuth, again, similar price points. Um, Maybe Jamin Salmon if there was an off-season injury to kick out, or Jacob Preston. Sounds like he's the next man up in the second row. Bostock. Actually, I think I've got Bostock in my team because it sounds like he's going to get the wing spot at the Dolphins. Yes, it's still at 495k. So I'm pretty sure I've got him in as someone who sounds like he's got a round one start. Obviously would have to wait for a try scoring game to spike his price, get some value out of that pick. Ethan Strange, it sounds like he's got a spot somewhere in the team there at the Raiders, whether it's at 5'8" or centre. 5'8" would obviously be better for Supercoach scoring, but we'll take centre wing if that's what we can get. And also Iro, a very popular pick again from the Sharks. If they decide to go away from the established centre combination of Talakai and Ramian, you'd imagine maybe Talakai plays second row or becomes that bench option. He was dropped last year for defensive reasons, and Fitzgibbon is big on defence. I don't know how this kid's defence is, but if he can shape up in the preseason and can lock down a starting spot, yeah, he'll be an absolute bargain at 220k. So there's the team in all its glory. If we give that a save, just take a little while to get it back. I think everyone's on here this afternoon. We'll go with hands. So I guess the one criticism of this team as I look at it is very template. So if you have a look, Jaden Brayley opposite Harry Grant is the most popular option. And you can see Hands is up there as well as a cheap option. Potentially Marshall King or Reece Robson look like the points of difference there. I don't mind Marshall King. As a pod, the Dolphins do have an early bye, like round 3, but then they play all through Origin. I think what I'm going to do is try to bring him in around Origin time and run with Grant and Marshall King as the hookers for the season. But obviously need one of these cheaper options to rise in value to facilitate that. Again, the front row, we've got the two most popular options there. Gone away from Flegler a little bit, so there's a little point of difference there. But again, not a lot of value in the front row, so it's not worth getting excited about. In the second row, I'm pretty happy to antipod Sean Lane. While he should improve on 44 average, I'm not scared of losing his scores. I think these guys can score just as well. Bo Fermor, I think he'll take a little while to get up and running. Siwa Wong, would be a good option, but I just think there's a bit of uncertainty at the Roosters. There's about 4 players that could play his spot. Jed Cartwright I think is going to be a bench option at best. Sean Bloor is the one I am worried about. And if I need to find an extra 20k, it could be a kick out to him. If his preseason form isn't looking flash, excuse me, it could be Pierre Cora to Bloor. I can make that happen in this budget. So that's probably the one move in the second row I would consider. But other than that, I am a bit scared about not having Fafita. But I think, coming off his surgery, I'm banking on he'll have a bit of a slow start. Also, it does depend on how Des Hasler sets up his team. So, can have a look and gamble that he will dip in price. The halves, again, I've got, the two most popular options. I don't mind Aiden Caesar as that cheap option. He has been my preferred cheap option, but again, there's a big jump from 340 to 970k, and that's, I guess, the fear factor. In saying that, if Chanel Harris-Tavita was the start opposite Sean Johnson at the Warriors, I would definitely think long and hard, because there is a lot of value built into that score, that price of 240k. Again, a massive jump, but I think one that, could be achievable, particularly if, we don't get these centre cheapies. I don't want to be starting with multiple players on the bench not playing round one. So that could be an option. At 5'8", so KO Weeks is obviously a popular choice. I guess just with the way I structured my team, I can't afford to bring him in. I can't swap him for Finu. Um, I think the only reason I would start him over Taff is if he was starting at fullback. If he's starting at 5'8", that is great, and I can understand you bringing him in the team. But I'd rather have Campbell and Taff both playing at fullback. Fullbacks outscore 5'8" consistently. Dylan Brown would be nice to have, but you can't have all the guns. So scared of him, but not as scared of him as I am of a couple of the other guys, namely Hines and Ponga. Campbell's, quite highly picked, fantastic. Centre wing, again, a few of the cheap options all there. It's like, well, these guys, these will all depend on who gets named round one. And even to these guys, there's some question marks over Russell, small question mark over May, but I'd imagine Kiraz and May would stay. The other five are just going to depend on team lists. And then at fullback, Ponga's the highest owned gun. You can understand Pappenhausen at the discount. And, if he looks good in the off-season, it might be too tempting at the price. I might just, take the punt that Ponga slips up early. But, pretty happy with the combination I've got. Like I said, Weeks, if he played fullback, would get the nod. Chevy Stewart, if he's named, will play in my centre wing. Same with Savage, centre wing option if picked. And then, all these guns are going to score well. It's just which one do you have? And, I don't know if there's any other corners I can cut to really start with 2-gun fullbacks and 2-gun halves. Maybe Harry Grant, but again, that's another trade that you've got to make. So it's pick your poison. I think the value is in someone cheaper like Taff than someone cheaper like Jaden Brayley, let's say, to go with hands. But if that's the way you want to go, that's perfectly fine. So there is a lawnmower going on outside. I don't know how much noise that's taking up, so I do apologise if the audio has gone to crap. In saying that, we will get the league codes up. So I've set up a couple of leagues. I've got the head-to-head league, which is set up for 20 teams. Maybe optimistic, but I know there's definitely been some positive chat about people joining. So the league code for that one is there on screen now. So 730787. And there should be the option for me to create a copy of the link. So I'll do that now, getting ready to post it in the description for the video. And then also the overall points league. So this one can have more than 20 teams. And if we do get a lot of interest, we could even have like a second head-to-head league perhaps for those that miss out. But this can be a one-in, all-in sort of thing. Just to track overall performance as well, nice and easily. And if you want to join that, the league code is there as well. So 382706. All right, but I will put those league codes in the description so that any and everyone can join. In saying that, didn't want to go to game day, sorry. Wanted to go back to the team. So yeah, so in summary, sort of gone a little bit more guns and rookies with the likes of Hines and Ponga, knowing that there's not a lot of value in those picks, but I guess probably more just being scared of what they can produce. Should just quickly whack in the reserves as well for the purpose of the video. So Hands and probably Smithies for round one. If it ever wants to work, that's fine. Doesn't really matter. We've got a lot of ground to cover. 5 weeks at least until the season starts. Definitely all the trials to get through and have a look at, and team lists and all that sort of good stuff. So I'll wrap the video up there. Final view of the team. And yeah, if you've got any questions, comments, thoughts on the team, let me know in the comments section. If you're enjoying the NRL content, remember, give the video a like. Subscribe for all of the content. We're going to have AFL stuff as well. The NBL still going, the EPL still going, so we'll see that out as well. And other than that, we'll catch you in the next one.